Subsidy removal, high cost of living, NLC, TUC, Shuns governments embark on, of course, nationwide protest. Welcome to Business Daily. I am Yusuf Akogu. We take the business top stories. Glad to have you back. Of course, like we told you before, we take our top stories there. The Nigeria Labour Congress and, of course, the sister union, Trade Union Congress are all protesting nationwide today over what they call economic hardship on Nigeria. They have been engaging government since the fuel subsidy was removed, demanding for government to quickly, introduce palliatives that will cushion the effects of the hardship on Nigeria. The protest is on across the country from Lagos to Kano to Kaduna and down here in Abuja is on, and of course in different states in Kwara and so many other states of the Federation, with the exception of some few states of the Federation. The protest is on. The NLC is demanding that government should indeed meet its demand before they can actually sit and negotiate on the table. They've also talked about the Presidential Steering Committee not really being given the freedom to negotiate with the NLC and, of course, TUC as well. Recall 2 days ago, President Bola Tinubu did address the nation and did promise that, of course, there are quite a whole lot of palliatives that have been proposed for various sectors of the country. But the NLC, despite all of that, decided to go ahead and, of course, start this protest nationwide today. Of course, quite a whole lot of warning has been issued that the NLC should actually handle all of this with caution so that it will not be hijacked by hoodlums. I have joining me in the studio someone who has been vocal with regards to the issue of subsidy and, of course, the quick interventions from the federal government, the Director General, the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, Mr. Wale Smart Uyerinde. I hope I'm correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes, let's start straight away. Despite the plea from the federal government, the NLC is still going ahead with the protest today.
Well, the right to negotiate is enshrined in many conventions of the ILO and also in local legislations. The right to negotiate is also the right to disagree is also inherent in that right to negotiate. And it's also important to note that The NLC basically is exercising its constitutional right to protest, which is guaranteed under the Constitution for all citizens. Peaceful protest in that context, and so far what we have heard as the protest has been peaceful, has been handled with decorum, which doesn't give us any problem. We just hope also that the security authorities, the police, and those that will be involved in managing the security outlook for today, will also live up to their constitutional responsibility of maintaining law and order. That is basically the concern of organized businesses. The protest with potential, from experience, spiraling into something that will be out of control of stakeholders. But so far, the report we've had is that the protest has been peaceful. And I said it's within the right of the NLC to
protest,
to take that route if that is a choice they've taken.
Now, 2 days ago, the president did address Nigerians, and he made a lot of promises. One of those promises is the fact that the government has will make available about 75 billion to fund enterprises at a single-digit loan, that is per annum. You talk about 125 billion as well for MSMEs. You talk about 200,000 metric tons of grain to be released to farmers, 225,000 metric tons of fertilizer, and so many others, including 100 billion naira to procure buses and then distribute to various states, all in the bid to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal. Hasn't government done enough in terms of promises that at least the government is barely 2 months in office? Why is NLC so bent on embarking on this strike, on this protest?
One element of negotiation is demonstration of trust. If you take trust content out of negotiation between two parties, then you have set the tone for disagreement that will be the future of subsequent agreements. And if you remember past government, we've had issues where government will agree to meet, we make commitments, and along the line will not fulfill those commitments. What transpired between the NLC and TUC and government in the inner room, if permit us to say that, in the many meetings they've had, we are not aware of the dynamics of those conversations and how the negotiation, how it actually went. What we are all aware of, or what we are informed, basically were the things that were announced at the end of those meetings. And to the NLC, government has made commitments, they've not fulfilled those commitments. Now, when those commitments are not fulfilled, there are a lot of dynamics also within the context of how to handle it. The NLC has, within the structure of decision-making, have felt strongly that protesting or going on strike is the way to go, which is within their rights to do that. Within the context of us, organized businesses, our view is that there is no substitute for social dialogue. We can agree to disagree, we can disagree to agree again, we can disagree to disagree again. But on the long run, all said and done, we all still have to come back to the table. And discuss.
Absolutely.
So NLC's position within the context of their reality is valid. The government has made promises, has signed agreements, and have not implemented those agreements. To the context of organized businesses, our position is valid because organized businesses were bleeding before this government came in. The bleeding continues even till now, and we cannot manage any crisis that might arise from shutdown of operations, or any crisis that might arise from, if unfortunately, we hope not, that the protest parade into something else and unscrupulous elements take advantage of this peaceful protest to create mayhem for organized businesses. The event of 2020 is still fresh in the minds of organized businesses, where we have the purposeful NSAT protest, as we call it, and was hijacked, was peaceful protest, but hijacked by hoodlums. And organized businesses lost over 5 trillion naira. Now, after the protest, after the looting, all of us, we moved back to our lives. Life continued for many Nigerians. But those businesses that lost colossally, those businesses that borrowed money from banks, from institutions to fund their operations, that lost properties, lost their investment, they are still unable to survive, or they are still trying to come out of the effect of that crisis. So you can understand the position of organized business when we say, look, it's better we continue to talk, it's better we continue to engage, and progressively we come to a middle ground of agreement.
Indeed. You have also said federal government should, as a matter of fact, take immediate step to address the pains of workers in Nigeria. So far, are you impressed with the step that the government has taken as an organized business?
Well, for us also, I will speak strictly from the perspective of organized businesses. It's a double-edged sword. Now, you are challenged within the context of unavailability of forex. For those that have to import inputs, dollar is now over and around 800 naira, because now your cost of production has increased. Now, you have to also deal with the issue of increase in energy costs. You have to deal with that. You have to also deal with employee welfare. And then you now start thinking of sustainability, not competitiveness now. Because you have to be sustainable first before you talk of competitiveness.
Absolutely.
Now, we are facing that pressure first. Now, from the employee side, from the worker side, and from the household side, the inflation rate has also depleted the purchasing power of an average Nigerian. So their ability to buy your product has also been impaired. So you are suffering from one part, from operational issues which are out of your control, and then your products that you are producing and services that you are able to render, you don't have off-takers, people to buy. So the consequences is this: if I produce a can of milk with expiry date of December 2023, for whatever reason, if consumers do not take off those products by December 2023, I'm losing investment. Investment that I've already committed to. I've paid interest on that kind of milk. I've paid salary, I've paid wages on that kind of milk. But by December 2023, that milk will expire. So which creates another dynamics for organized businesses. So for us, beyond the rhetorics, the president has made very fundamental statement, but we need immediate action. The palliatives, whatever it is, I think we need immediate action. And for government to do that, we've also urged the federal government to put in place the structures. Before the implementation of the palliatives to manufacturers, before it can be done effectively, you probably need the Minister for Trade and Investments to coordinate that activity. We don't have one yet. The 300 buses that the president promised, 3,000 buses the president promised, you probably need the Ministry of Transport to coordinate that. We don't have a Minister of Transport in place. The issue of the national minimum wage or wage adjustment for workers, before that can be implemented, you also need the Minister for Labor and Employment, or whatever one want to call it. You also need that in place to coordinate the disbursement of those funds. You need the Minister of Finance in place. So to drive the implementation, those structures have to be in place.
You need a cabinet.
So our counsel is this: that government should put in more haste, we should be more definitive and come up with what are the plans to actually implement this process. That will further assuage the mind of Nigerians, assuage organized businesses that look, there is a path to achieving all the laudable plans that the president has rolled out.
And indeed, the president, the federal government has spoke in that light. They have said that all of these things, plans are actually in place. Just like you said, the cabinet is not yet in place. So, and the process is on. The National Assembly is screening the nominees of the president. Isn't it at least for the labor and of course the other trade union? Why can't they just give the government that benefit of that? Okay, allow the cabinet to come in place. And when maybe after 1 or 2 months, you see that the promises from the government is not yielding any result, then you can then take to the streets and, of course, protest.
It's neither here nor there, Now, for me to take your subsequent promises to the bank, then your previous promises should at least worth something. I think what has happened we're not totally aware of the conversation in the meeting, those meetings they've had, because we're not invited as organized businesses. Or what we think must have happened is probably government made certain commitments and did not fulfill those commitments. And Labour felt, look, if you've not fulfilled some minimal commitment that you've made initially, then what is the guarantee that you will fulfill these humongous fundamental promises that you have made? And as I said earlier when I was opening my comments, trust is very fundamental within the context of our engagement. And we've also urged government that at this early stage, the need to build national consensus is very, very, very important. If you take, no matter how beautiful the policy, the programs might be, if you don't have a consensus, a national consensus around it, then it becomes very difficult for the citizens to buy into it. It becomes very difficult for even critical stakeholders to buy into it. So it makes implementation very difficult.
Now, if the implementation is done in haste, don't you think we may end up making the same mistake that the federal government, the previous government made?
There's no, the first thing is put the structures in place. The Senate is already screening the ministers. They've finished screening about the 25 or the whole 28 initial that was sent.
23 have been
screened so far. We had that new list to be sent today. There's no reason why, from our context, we don't also know the dynamics of government, but for the president to have chosen 28, we believe strongly, knowing him for who he is, that he's not given to frivolities, he probably will have known who is going to occupy what. So why delay? People need action. People are facing some level of high level of economic trauma, depending on your level in the strata of economics space. And people need action. People just want to see that coordinated, definitive action that, look, this will happen. It cannot happen when the structures to drive them are not in place. And once you put in those structures...
But are you against the subsidy removal?
No, we for 10 years, for more than 10 years, we have canvassed for the removal of subsidy. We have canvassed that subsidy should be removed. We have canvassed that it is not serving the average Nigerians. We have canvassed that it is a drain in the purse of this country. And in the last 3-4 years, the reality became more obvious. Because at the point, the Minister of Finance then reported, look, we don't even have, our revenue is not sufficient enough even to service debts. So something have to give. So the most difficult decision you have to make is to remove subsidy. And we totally support the removal of subsidy with some conditions, albeit. And part of those critical conditions is, look, we have 4 refineries. Well, it is not the challenge, it's not the challenge, it's a challenge that precedes this government. We have 4 refineries. Why can't 2 or 1.5, if 1.5 is admissible,
put to use?
Why can't 1.5 of the refineries be operational? Because if you have 1 refinery operational, and that refinery can meet 1/4 of the fuel consumption.
That's part of NLC demand anyway.
If that 1 refinery can meet just 1/4 of the fuel consumption of Nigerians, now you have created a dynamics that will counter whatever price the oil marketers are bringing. So an oil marketer can go and import. Import is fuel. You can say it's 1,000 per liter. So me as a citizen, I have the right to either to go and buy from the marketer at 1,000, or to look for the one that I can buy for 300 or 400 or 100 naira. So you have created a dynamics where the market forces can actually operate. If you don't create that dynamics of counter forces, then you'll have just opened up the space for smart Nigerians to take advantage of your beautiful interventions. And that is what we are seeing now. So our call for government also is get the refineries working. It beats our imagination that a country as big as us, as endowed as us, with human and material resources. We have 4 refineries. 1 is not operational. And probably we are the only one in the OPEC community, in the oil producing community that has crude, natural resources, crude that we didn't pay for, that God endowed us naturally. And we find it difficult to maximize the benefit of those. It beats our imagination. So let governments get the refineries working. It will have serious and immediate effect on the prices of crude, price of petroleum.
Although Dangote refinery is being expected.
Yeah. Now you have to also look at how much, do an analysis of how much Dangote borrowed to build his refinery. So the refinery is also not a charity. He has bills and bills to pay. And if you look at the dynamics of the economy of it now, he probably borrowed dollars at the rate of 450 or 500 naira. Now he will have to pay back at the rate of 800 and something naira, so which changed the whole dynamics for the business. So we have to factor in all those. But leaving Dangote out of it, it's also a pointer to us that if an individual can muster the strength to start from scratch, complete a refinery, then we as a nation, as a people, have no business not getting our 4 refineries working, whatever the reason that may be.
Now, you have said that, we say, while organized labor, I'm quoting you now, is at liberty to engage with the government on behalf of its members on issues of welfare as they relate to the impact of any economic policy. Sometimes deadlock may hold sway. What do you mean by that?
Negotiation is you are coming with your bouquet of demands. I have my bouquet of demands. It will be anomalous for me to come with the mind that my 4 items must be acceded to. It's at that point I've created a situation where I'm not negotiating again. I'm demanding, I'm lording it over you. So the basic principle of negotiation is you come with your demands, I come with my demands. You probably have your stakeholders that are giving you the mandates. These are the things you go and negotiate. My stakeholders have given me my mandate. These are the things that you should go and negotiate. It's possible that I will not get the 4. It is possible that you will not concede to the 4. So inherent in that process is also the reality that there might be a deadlock. And if there is a deadlock, the option for us is to continue to talk. We were at the International Labour Conference in June, and unfortunately, by reason of what we do, I'm in the ILO governing board, and Labour also is the ILO governing board. And there was a critical issue that came up at the IRC, where the governments, the 187 governments discussing the financing of the ILO, could not agree on modalities of finance. And the issue at stake is that issues that are fundamental to some countries, issues that are beyond bread and butter for some countries, issues that is at the soul of some countries, some very, very strong and influential countries. And those countries insisted, look, this issue must be factored into the conversation of the ILO. But the generality of the nations felt, look, this issue, they are peculiar to you. We don't have to bring it to affect all of us. The issue dragged for almost 11 days. And the budget must be approved on the 13th day of the ILO, so that the conference can head on the 14th day. They dragged from the first day to the 11th day. Negotiations were going on from morning till night. Concessions were being made. And on the last day, there was a middle ground was arrived at because there was conversation that was going between the government, between the labor, between the employers. Conversation kept going until that agreement. That was the beauty of social dialogue, and that is what we subscribe to, and that's what we encourage, and that's what we advise labor and also advise government.
Absolutely. I want to give you 20 seconds because we're almost out of time. Do you think this protest will NLC will achieve its aim through this protest in 20 seconds?
It depends on the aim. If the aim is to get governments to be proactive If the aim is to get the president to speak to Nigerians, they've already achieved that. If the aim is to raise the awareness of Nigerians to the reality of what is going on, NSC have achieved that. And if the aim is also to organize a peaceful protest that will get all of us back into the conversation of the appropriateness of getting our nation working, I think they've also achieved their aim. It depends on what exactly the aim of the protest is.
Yes, I must thank you, Director General, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, Mr. Wale Smart. I must thank you for your time on Business Daily today.
Thank you for
an interesting conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, with that, we wrap the show today. Indeed, you know, we did not start the show as usual because of the peculiarity of today. But as we wrap up, we bring you, of course, we leave you with this data from the stock market and, of course, this commodity price as well. I am Yusuf Akogu.